I've been drinking, and I'm going to tell you how someone died due to the weight of their wealth, and it led to the creation of Crown Royal and Belme honey.
Wow.
And if you want to hear about it, then you should stick around. Patrons, let's thank them. We have to thank the patrons because we couldn't do this show without you.
No, we couldn't. And you know how expensive I am? To be here on this show?
It's not free. I'll tell you that.
It ain't free.
It's not free.
Ain't enough free whiskey to get me here.
Yeah, well,
Just kidding.
I actually used to pay him in whiskey, but anyway, we don't need to talk about that.
That was in the past.
It was in the past. Now we're in the present. And you guys make it happen.
Yes, you do.
We did the numbers. Millions of people have watched this podcast. Individuals, not views.
Right.
Millions of individuals. And less than 1/100th of 1%.
Wow.
Of people who have watched this show contribute financially to keep it going. And we want to thank you.
Yes.
But it's not just about contributing.
No.
We want to give back. There's member benefits. We have bonus content.
Yep.
Special offers, distillery takeovers, where you're king for the day. You come in, you get to taste out of barrels.
Oh, it's a great time.
Private tours. Then we release barrel picks that are exclusive just for the Patreon members. Mm-hmm. In-person meetups. Monthly virtual bottle shares where we get together, shoot the breeze, have a good time. Discounts on merch. And the satisfaction of knowing that you support the channel and its mission.
Yes, and if you don't know the mission, stick around to the end of this video because it is a big thing I think we're doing. Changing lives.
We are.
One glass of bourbon at a time, so it's a really good time.
So I've been drinking all day. I should drink Remus. It's appropriate. All right, so here's what's going to happen. I am impaired, and I'm going to tell you a crazy history story about whiskey, okay? But we don't want to encourage irresponsible drinking.
No, absolutely not.
All right, so background. Lindsay and I are hanging out with some friends, and we're having some drinks. And my buddy's wife is sipping on New Riff.
Good choice.
Yeah, it's a good whiskey. Mm-hmm. And she asked me about the history of the brand. And I, in my mildly inebriated state, told an extended story that lasted for longer than it should have about all of the exciting elements of interconnected history that brought together the brand New Riff. And when I got done, she said, "Hey, you should get drunk and do this on your podcast." And so that's basically what we're going to do. Yeah. So, Wes, this story starts in 1850.
Oh, I remember that time. It was a good time.
We're going in the Wayback Machine.
Yeah.
A German man named John Nelson, who was a soap candle maker.
Okay.
He decided he was going to immigrate to the United States with his whole family. You got to sell your business.
Okay.
So he does. He sells it. And it was a nice business. It was worth some money.
Okay.
Okay? And he wants to take his wealth with him. But you know what happens whenever you immigrate from Germany to the United States in 1850 and you've got a bunch of valuables with you? Sometimes you get robbed.
Yes. It's a real threat.
It's a real threat, and he didn't want to get robbed. So he had a real ingenious idea.
It is actually a good idea.
And he went to a custom suit maker, and he had a custom suit made that the lining stored all of his net worth in gold inside of the suit. And apparently back then you didn't change clothes. Okay, so he's just gonna wear the suit the whole time. He was on the ship coming over here. And so he gets on the ship with all of his net worth, and he's like, I'm sure he's nervous, but he's like, I don't know. He feels like he's got a one-up on everybody because he's walking around. He's like, I'm a millionaire, and y'all don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's got to be like that, right?
I mean, if you're walking around with a suit full of gold in it, even though they don't know what's in there,
right?
You know what's in there, and it's going to give you a little.
It's
going to
give you a little, like you're going to have.
You're going to be walking into the chow hall crotch first. You know what I mean?
You know what I'm saying? You know what
What's up? I got gold in my jacket.
I got gold in my jacket, son, but you don't know.
Make me a pork chop.
You don't know why I got all the swag. I'm rizzing it up, son. I'm
excited.
Later Ranch. I just used the word my kids use, rizz. I'm not exactly sure what it means, but don't worry about that part.
I think it literally means you have gold in your jacket.
Oh, yeah,
that
rizz.
Is some major rizz.
That makes sense. Okay, so
back
anyway,
to the story, Charles.
It turns out not to be the best plan because a big storm came along and he got blown overboard.
Yes.
And it turns out that if your entire suit is filled with gold, you cannot swim.
God rest his soul.
And he drowned. He legit died.
He's still there.
Yeah.
down in the ocean.
And I did a little bit of research. No one seems to have found his suit. And I'm a little surprised. I don't know how much gold it was, to do like a whole expedition. But apparently no one's found it. But he did die, okay? And that part's real sad.
Sure.
Real sad because he had a whole family. He had a wife. He had kids.
And they arrived with no gold.
And they arrived with no gold, okay? And one of the kids' names was Charles Nelson. And he was 15 years old. So he arrives in New York City in 1850, okay?
Uh-huh.
Sans his father and with no money.
No gold.
And he's got a little brother and his mom. They got other kids. And she can't work because it's 1850 and like apparently women couldn't do that or whatever. And so he's got to go to work as a 15-year-old, and so does his little brother. So he goes to work for a candle and soap factory because, hey,
that's what he knows.
That's what he knows.
That's right.
And so he's in New York from 1850 to 1852, and he is selling candles and soap. Or no, he's making it or something. I don't know. He works for a candle and soap company. Okay, right. That's the part you need to get. Okay.
Right. Makes it.
West Side? I don't know. No, that's East Side, right?
We shouldn't throw gang signs
East
on this
side?
episode.
Okay. All right. Sorry. I've been drinking.
I don't want to get killed on my way home.
They're throwing gang signs at me off camera, and it threw me off.
This is just me doing this.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe
this is not a gang sign.
I hung out with the wrong people when I was younger, and now I throw East and West Side. I don't know what's happening. Anyways, so.
I don't know what's happening
in 1852.
Okay.
Charles Nelson moved to Cincinnati.
Fast forward, here we are.
Well, it's not really that fast.
2 years.
It's only 2 years.
That's fast.
Well, I mean, it was
like
a long
5
time
minutes
ago.
And now we're in 2
like
years.
if you think about 2 years since 1850, it's like just a second or something.
All right.
That makes sense to me in my mind. Okay, so they moved to Cincinnati, and he becomes a butcher. Okay, and somewhere, because he was 15 when he got to New York. So when he moved to Cincinnati, he was 17.
Okay. And
he left Cincinnati when he was 22. So somewhere between 17 and 22, he started his own grocery store.
Okay.
Between 17 and 22. I don't know how to say it, but it's Blersch and Nelson.
That sounds great.
Blersch.
I think you did it right.
Yeah, Blersch. Yeah, I'm going to say it's Blersch and
Blersch
Nelson. And apparently he sold that business, okay, because in 1857 he decided to move to Nashville. From Cincinnati. Okay?
Cashville is what that one rapper used to call it.
Yeah. And he was there to make cash. And to be honest, he was part of the not Illuminati, but like the originals.
Original gangsters?
Yeah, the OGs from Nashville.
OGs. Yeah.
Yeah. They were
not the Illuminati.
I'm sorry. I've been drinking. All right.
He went to Nashville, a.k.a. Cashville. He's 22.
He's 22. 1857. He's in Nashville, and he starts another grocery store called Nelson and Pfeiffer. But it's got a P in there, and I don't know.
Pfeiffer?
Pfeiffer. It's P-F-E-I.
Pfeiffer.
F-F-E-R. Yep. Yeah. Pfeiffer. I'm going to say Pfeiffer.
Pfeiffer.
All right. But even though he's only 22, he's on his second marriage because his first wife died. I bet he was. You know what? This is why you don't have a studio audience.
If you're in the studio, please keep it down unless you're cheering or clapping.
Be dropping. It's like you give them whiskey and then they're just like. Mah!
They're just like throwing it everywhere.
Second person to drop a water bottle. I'm not even lying.
And it wasn't even Sam this time.
It wasn't even Sam this time.
Which is surprising.
It's Alec, just so you know. Anyways, I digress. His biggest business was he sold meat, coffee, and whiskey. And
that's funny because they kind of do go together.
They do.
I'm going to say that doesn't go together.
You need all of them.
But like a meat, coffee, whiskey doesn't sound too bad.
I feel like you drink the meat. You drink the meat. You don't drink meat.
Well, you have to blend it up first.
You could.
Like if you had...
You drink the coffee in the morning, and then you eat the meat in the afternoon, and then you drink the whiskey at night.
Whiskey, yeah.
All right, so he's rocking it, okay? He's got a grocery store. But he sells the grocery store because he's really loving the whiskey business, okay? And he raised some money by selling his grocery store to buy the distillery that had been making his whiskey that he was selling.
Okay.
Okay, but there's a couple things you need to know about Charles Nelson, okay?
Number one,
he sold coffee to Maxwell House Hotel.
What?
And that coffee was good to the last drop.
Maxwell. It's real. This is
Telling y'all,
this is history.
I'm telling y'all the truth. Charles Nelson created Maxwell House Coffee indirectly.
You don't have to be that loud.
You're welcome.
We have actual microphones.
I'm sorry, I just got excited. I felt like people were doubting me.
This is a microphone in front of you, right here.
There's two.
You don't
They're
have to yell.
very foul.
You don't have to like yell across the nation into this person's living room so they can hear you.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
But listen.
All right. Anyways, it was good to the last drop.
It was good to the last drop, and that's why you have Maxwell House Coffee today.
Meat, coffee, whiskey.
You're welcome. Okay. And the other thing you need to know is that he liked to encourage other people to be like good at stuff and like to go out and accomplish everything that they can accomplish.
Accomplish it, yeah. Since that's a real word.
Yeah, that's what he was
Is
about.
this a real episode, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna do this. We're doing it. Here we are.
Should I stop?
Accomplish.
All right.
I knew I was a bigger Bourbon Real Talk fan than you.
How do you know that?
Well, because I don't just use a prideful goat Glen. I got an official Bourbon Real Talk tumbler.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, I got this Bourbon Real Talk lanyard to carry my whiskey glass in.
Oh, well, speaking of whiskey glasses, do you have one of these?
No, I don't.
Rocks glass.
Oh, yeah?
Yep, official.
Well, I love my wife, and I bought her this official whiskey wife flask from Bourbon Real Talk.
Well, that's cute and everything, but I got my wife one of these.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Well,
You can just add your own liquor, and it's an actual cocktail right there in a jar.
Me and my wife like to make cocktails, so we got this simple syrup off the website.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you and your wife have one of these? This is an official sticker. You can only get these on the website.
No, but I do have these official coasters that have the Bourbon Real Talk logo on them, and I'm representing.
Well, while you're representing those little coasters of yours, I've got an aroma kit.
Do you?
Yeah, so I can smell literally everything in bourbon. Everything.
Well, I don't have that, but I do have this sample box that I keep all my samples in because I'm part of the community and I share samples.
Yeah, but do you have Glen toppers that are officially Bourbon Real Talk?
I don't have that, but I do have this large whiskey carrying case for my glasses so that I don't break them.
See, I knew you had that. That's why I have the smaller version, okay? It packs more easily into your suitcase. I don't have to mess with that big old thing, okay?
Suitcase, that's for lamos. Check this thing out. I have a Bourbon Real Talk bottle carrying bag. You can't beat that.
I don't know if I can because...
And on top of that, I have a Bourbon Real Talk t-shirt. I'm the bigger fan.
Oh, I can beat that. Is it extra schmedium?
No, I don't have an extra medium.
Ha! Extra schmedium.
You might be the bigger fan. You win.
I knew it.
So whether you're a Bourbon Real Talk superfan or simply looking for quality whiskey swag, head over to bourbonrealtalk.com today.
And so this dude helped start Maxwell Coffee and another grocery store chain before he went on to completely reshape the bourbon landscape that we know today. Okay, so
What a accomplishment.
it was an accomplishment. All right, so he named his new distillery Nelson Greenbrier Distillery.
Been there.
Okay, and in 1885, when they were at their heyday, they were 16. Now keep in mind, Jack Daniel's started in 1866. Nelson Greenbrier Distillery was 16 and a half times the size of Jack Daniel's. So we're talking about one of the largest distilleries in the United States. They're
If not the
massive.
We'll
Okay?
bleep that part out. For sure.
Yeah,
Thank you. Creating more work for me.
yeah, it's his job.
Let's keep those to a minimum.
I like it when you just put the bleep and they know what I said.
Yeah, I know what you said.
Yeah. So they're operating, okay, and everything's great, all right. But in 1891, sadly, he passed away.
I mean, a baller can only live so long.
Yeah, I mean, but he was out there doing it and doing it wild. You know what I'm saying?
Gold jackets.
Yeah. That was his that was his dad.
But I bet he had one just in honor.
Yeah,
you know?
just probably to honor him. You know. I mean, that's
because
not,
he's on dry land.
That's
He's
not in
like
the history,
walking around on dry
but
land.
you know, it could be. Anyways, all right. So Nelson Greenbrier became one of the largest female-run businesses in the 1800s.
Whoa. She took over?
Yeah, the wife had to toot. Yeah.
The wife had to toot?
Man, all women toot. We gotta
They fluff, or whatever it's called.
take the
forget.
stigma out.
What is it, Angela? They fluff? All right.
All right, run out of whiskey. Here we go.
I've got to go home. I really do. 1909. We're in 1909.
Yeah,
now.
1909. Prohibition hits. They had to shut down the distillery because Tennessee had Prohibition 10 years before the U.S. government implemented it.
Mm-hmm. Let's get this for you.
Oh, you don't...
on your wood.
Oh, my wood can take a beating. We should start over for sure. All right, here we go. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So, national prohibition hits the United States. It's passed in 1919, but it doesn't kick in until 1920. Okay.
It's a terrible time.
And Nelson Greenbrier Distillery has been shut down since 1909. And in 1923, and this part's important, Samuel Bonthman,
yes,
who is from Canada, figures out, like, I can get super rich by bootlegging liquor into the United States. So he goes to the widow of Charles Nelson and buys all of the distillery equipment from Nelson Greenbrier and ships it up to Canada. And he starts making whiskey up there and bootlegging it into the United States.
Genius.
And
I take that back.
And becomes a billionaire.
Okay.
An actual, like, modern day billionaire.
And at this time in history, that's pretty impressive.
I don't know if he had $1 billion back then, but he would definitely be considered a billionaire by today's standards. Okay, so, like, super, super legit.
Huge.
Yeah, so it's huge. And so he's bringing in all this whiskey, and he's, like, doing it wild. And he's got all this money. And then after Prohibition ends in 1933, he's like, well, I don't want the gravy train to stop, and I've got all this cash. And so he's like,
Don't tell me he made Crown Royal.
He did. Yeah. So he decides he's gonna go legit. So he goes to the U.S. government and he's like, "Hey, I want to be legit." And they're like, "Bro, are you serious? Like,
only MC Hammer can be that."
He's like, "You've been violating the crap out of our laws for years and years." And he's like, "Yeah, but I got money." And then they were like, "Okay, fine." Now this is 1933, and they're like, "All right, if you pay a $25 million fine," he's like, "Say less. Do you take cash?"
He's like,
he
I got
pays
that in
a
my front pocket.
$25 million fine. There's going to be a whole other drunk history episode about this dude because he was wild. His son, like, went nuts and was, like, buying Hollywood studios so he could set up a casting couch. Just like nuts. So stay tuned because there's going to be another episode about this dude. But anyways, so he ends up creating Crown Royal. Okay?
Okay.
And so if you fast forward, this dude took this Nelson Greenbrier distillery, which was one of the largest distilleries in the United States, turned it into a bootlegging operation, and then he used his fortune to create Crown Royal. He bought what's currently Ross and Squibb or MGPI distillery. He bought Four Roses, all of this stuff. So
he bought all those distilleries?
Oh yeah. And that's why all these bottles are out here, because if that dude hadn't sewn all of his gold in his jacket and he had not died, none of these whiskeys would exist today. And that happened in 1850, just so you know. All right, so
boom, roasted.
So now you got a story of these Wes has to go. But I'm talking a lot.
No, I was just checking the
it's
time.
Okay,
it's
fine.
We have in fact
it's
been
fine.
talking for an hour.
I've been drinking. All right.
It's okay. That was the plan.
That was the plan. All right, so there's this story that goes that there are these two brothers, Charles and Andy Nelson. Remember the Nelson name?
I remember the Nelsons.
Okay, yeah.
From Nashville.
And it was supposed to be a post-graduation trip because they both graduated from college. Not at the same time, but I guess when the second one graduated, they went on a trip. Yeah. And supposedly they stumbled across this historical marker and they figured out, like, oh my God, my great-great-great-grandfather was the owner of this, like, giant distillery and blah, blah, blah. Now the Nelson Greenbrier website has a much more plausible story about how their father took them on a trip and they purposely went to go see the area that their grandfather was from and all of that
makes
stuff.
a little more sense.
And so basically when they started researching the history, the idea is they were like, well, holy crap. And this all happened in 1920, listen to me. I've been drinking.
I've been listening.
2006.
For sure.
So in 2006, they took this family trip.
Boom.
They see the historical site, great-great-great-grandfather, distillery. There's some locals that have some lore, and they're like, this building was this, and this happened there, and blah, blah, blah. And so they decide, you know what, we're going to resurrect the family business, Charles and Andy. And so the distillery didn't start until 2009. They were buying bulk whiskey from MGPI in Indiana, which was purchased by Samuel Bonfman post Prohibition. And, you know, that turned into that history. And so it's kind of ironic that their family distillery equipment was shipped to Canada, used a bootleg, and buy a distillery, and then they went to that same distillery to help resurrect their brand exactly 100 years after their distillery had closed down.
Wow.
It closed down in 1909, and they reopened in 2009, which is kind of cool.
That is kind of cool.
So they started contract distilling, and they also have like a different product. They had Belme, which that's actually kind of an interesting side history. So Belme plantation, I took you there. So they decided they're going to resurrect the brand.
Okay.
And everything's totally copacetic. And then they start doing research on the history of Tennessee whiskey, and they figure out that way back in the day, okay, like in 1871, like there was this local horse racing ranch that bought a horse called Bonnie Scotland. And it was like internationally famous because it was like beating all these horses that it wasn't supposed to beat. And Bonnie Scotland's descendants are basically super tied into Kentucky Derby winners.
Yeah.
Right? So like 11 Triple Crown winners are related to this horse. And there was a whiskey company way back in the 1800s, starting in 1878, that wanted to capitalize on the fame of this local like horse racing ranch called Belme. And so they contracted with Belme to use their name for a Belme bourbon. And from 1878 to 1887, Sperry Wade & Co. was making whiskey called Belme Bourbon. And eventually their distillery was destroyed in a fire, and they ended up closing down. So later, whenever Charles and Andy Nelson decided to restart Nelson Greenbrier, they thought, well, what if we partnered with Belme? Because Belme is like still a thing.
Sure.
The plantation is now owned by like a historical society, and they were able to go to them and say like, hey, we want to license your name the way that you did it back in the 1800s. So they launched the Belme brand, but after a while, they decided like, hey, we want to get back to our Nelson Greenbrier roots. So they're kind of phasing out Belme. But just to bring it full circle, because we promised you in the intro, we were going to explain how this dude dying from the weight of his wealth created Crown Royal and Belme Honey. They eventually created Belme Honey, which is probably their most popular offering that has its highest secondary value.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the connection to all of that. But, you know,
That was in 2009. When did they create Belme Honey?
I don't remember when the first year was released.
Because I was about to create that, but I guess they did first.
Yeah, they did it first. Yeah,
that was an idea
they're really good at making Belme honey.
I had this idea for a Belme honey. And
Yeah.
They did it, I guess.
Yeah, they'd be real. Well, first off, you'd have to get the licensing rights.
Oh, I was trying.
Hey, remember when he snuck into that place?
Yeah. We've snuck in some places.
We did. We tried to go in, and they were like, "No, we got."
No, you can't come in here and film.
You can't
and I was
come in
like,
here.
okay. And I
we were like, "Okay, yeah, cool,
sneak
cool,
around
cool."
and get my camera out.
Yeah,
Start filming.
and then we just walked around, and then they were like,
film
"Hey,
stuff.
there's an event, and it's paid for. Do you want a free tasting?" And we're like, "Yeah, I guess so."
Oh, we'll do it. Sure.
Yeah, we did some stuff. We got a free tasting.
But I will say, the Belme folks, I hope they have some new people working there. Those guys weren't very nice.
Oh, no, they fixed it.
They fixed it?
Yeah.
I don't remember them fixing it.
That
That one girl didn't fix it.
No, Charles called me.
Okay, he fixed it.
Yeah, Charles called me. Oh, shit, I almost knocked over my stuff.
The one girl didn't fix it.
No, she was not good. But we went there one time and they were mean to us. And then we said it in an episode. And to Nelson Greenbrier's credit,
He called you?
he called me and he
Nelson
spent
did?
45 minutes on the phone. And he was real nice.
You know what I think they should do?
What?
These Nelson boys. They should come out with a little specialty collector's like bottle called like the Gold Jacket or something.
They probably should. I mean, they talk about it on their website.
If you hear this, I swear I'll come after you.
I'm gonna email it to Charles.
Tell me,
He's gonna
and
see.
I will come after you. This is my idea.
No.
I'm saying it right now.
No,
The Gold Jacket series.
we gotta cut all this shit out.
If I see that on a shelf in Specs,
No.
I will knock over that shelf and cause a scene. then I will come straight to Cashville, Tennessee for at least a gold jacket and more.
At least.
And you will all pay for it.
No, Charlie called me.
Okay, he called you. If you've made it all right, then I'm good with that.
No, he made it real good.
You get good. I'll trust you.
He did a whole training.
You can have that idea for free.
He did a whole training with all the people.
All these 8 people in here will at least know where that idea came from.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's enough for me.
Yeah, it's like Wild Turkey 102.
That's my idea too.
Yeah, that's
Don't
his idea.
you dare steal it, and you'll like it. It's a little. It's different.
Is one better?
I'll give it a 71.
But just keep in mind that everything that you've ever tasted from MGP, and everything you've ever tasted from Seagram 7, and everything you've ever tasted from Crown Royal, none of that stuff would have happened if it wasn't for John Nelson
giving his life and his son stepping up to the plate.
I mean, it's just an amazing story about just stick-to-itiveness, and it just represents the American dream of an immigrant coming here and working hard and building a future. And it literally shaped the world that we live in. Maxwell House Coffee, a grocery store chain that's still in business today, and virtually every whiskey that you've ever heard of has been impacted in some way by these events, and that's pretty amazing. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode, and I want to tell you a little bit about our show philosophy. We're all about bringing people together around bourbon, and that is a critical element of the show because I lost a loved one to suicide, and in the aftermath of his death, I learned that he had lost his social connections from around him. And I started looking for ways to help create social connections. And I saw how whiskey was doing that. And I thought maybe if I got you connected to whiskey would do the rest of the job and get you connected to others. But if you're going to create connection, you do have to have some forums. And when we looked at the forums that were out there, we saw a lot of negativity and hate that was not very conducive for connections. And Wes, in his infinite wisdom, eventually convinced me to start Bourbon Real Talk Community.
I do have some good ideas every once in a while.
They are good ideas, and it did take a while.
The Gold Jacket's just one of them.
Yeah, the Gold Jacket's a good idea. But Bourbon Real Talk Community has worked, and we have created a troll-free environment without the hate where people can connect with one another. Doesn't matter your ideological views. That's not important there. And so it's free. If you're interested, you can go to Facebook and look at Bourbon Real Talk Community. But the other thing that those trolls taught us is that if someone can hate you online, there's nothing that keeps me from loving you online. And that's why we end every episode the same way, and that's this. If you woke up this morning and you're unsure whether or not anyone loves you, just know that we love you. And we'll see you next time on Bourbon Real Talk. Cheers.
Cheers. Don't swim with suits on. Well, she had to, and she went to the emergency room.
Yeah.
So,
No.
911 and everything.
Editing cut.
Yeah, my wife is on the floor in the bathroom.
And just
She
like-
curls up. She's dying. She's dying. Wait a minute. Oh, she's good. We're good. Cancel that ambulance. Cancel it. We're good. She's back asleep. Everybody's happy.
It's not.
Sorry.
That's fair. Oh, shit. I'm just going to start telling a crazy fucking story.
Okay.
And then you're just going to interject.
Okay.
And that's pretty much the whole thing.
Just interject here and there throughout the story.
You know, like we do.
Yeah, just kind of do my thing.
Yeah, you just
do your
kind
thing.
of.
And
Yeah,
then
I'm just going to I'm going to say some shit. And then you're just going to.
I'm gonna say some shit,
And then all the shit's going to come together.
and it's gonna be said.
It's going to be great.
All right.